Okay, let's get sound check. Sound check. Sound off, one
Check
at a time.
2. This is me. I think I should be good. I'm not clipping or anything.
Francois, Nick.
Yeah. How's this for me?
Hello. Hello.
I think we're good.
1, 2.
All right, I'll just wait for Farsight, the custodian of sound, to confirm that our sound is in fact good.
Wow, if he wants to hear about custodians, he's at the wrong place.
Francois, you can move back from your camera a little bit. You're like
Actually, I will push the camera back.
You're
because,
filling the.
Francois pulling his boomer camera.
How's
You guys
this?
see me? You guys see me?
Is this better?
No, actually, you clip out because of your background. Talking to
Me?
Nick.
Yeah. I can get rid of it.
All right, we are good to
No,
go.
it looks good now. It only clipped out when you were close.
Oh, okay.
So, see, Farsight said we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 187, and it's going to be all about our first 9th edition tournament.
It is, in fact, the first tournament, yes.
My second, actually.
Oh, woohoo.
We'll have to talk about that. So we have returning. I think you've been on a lot of podcasts in 9th edition, all the way from Quebec. We have
That's me, Francois.
everybody's favorite Ultramarine player. And from kind of Quebec, but lives in Ontario, we have
Nick. Yep, I'm from Quebec, but yeah, now I'm in Ontario for sure.
a.k.a. the Grey Knight.
He defected.
You can tell from his background, those that are watching, he has a Grey Knight background. I wonder what army Nick plays.
Yeah.
And I guess joining us from Ottawa, we have
Me, Darren.
a.k.a. the Golden Shower. And I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammer Chris on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us. And I guess I'm the Sister of Battle tonight.
You have your uniform?
Nope. I remember one time we were, this was maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It was our first ever Adepticon. And we were going as the Nuns with Guns because we were, for the team tournament, there's like 4 1,000-point armies. And that's actually where I started playing Sisters. I did 1,000 points for that tournament. And then, oh my God, something Morrison? He played the other Sisters. And then Ricky played Ricky Johnson. Not the Ottawa Ricky Johnson, the Toronto Ricky Johnson, because there's 2 of them now. And he played Astra Militarum, which was guard then, and Will Paul played guard. And we actually got 7th overall at our first ever Adepticon. So
Adepticon is also where I saw my first Sister of Battle cosplay. What's her name? That girl who has a YouTube channel.
I have no clue because cosplay is not
one.
something that I
Is
follow.
it Miranda?
No,
from, like,
not Miranda. She's Wargamer girl, right? No, it's the other.
Yeah.
It's the other girl. Anyway,
There's quite a few. Like, I don't know. We went to an ETC one time, and there was, I think it was like 5 Repentia chicks. What country was that? That might have been, I don't remember the country, but yeah, 5 Repentia
Repentia are
chicks.
mostly naked.
Yeah, and they were true to form. Yeah,
Good. Committed to the role.
yeah.
Nice.
So this show, as we said earlier, is going to be all about our first 9th edition RTT. Now, we're not as liberal as certain countries, Greece, having 120 player events in the middle of a pandemic. But so we had a fairly COVID safe event, as it was all people that we generally know, 8 people. It was at the store, Multizone in Elmer, which is closed actually. So there was no outside clientele walking in and out. It was closed that day anyway. They're only open, I think, 2 days a week, right, Francois?
3 now, I think.
3 now. Yeah, so they're still relatively shut down for the pandemic. But yeah, so we went there. We did 3 games, random missions per game. I guess we could quickly run through the 8 people. It was the 4 of us, plus the 4 people that aren't here is Jeremy's Dark Angels, Jamie's Knights. We had James's Chaos Space Marines.
Alpha
and
Legion.
Will Paul's Death Guard.
Death Guard.
Oh, cool. So I guess take it away, Darren, with the sponsors.
Yeah, so shout out to all our followers and supporters and our patrons for supporting the channel. Thank you very much. Shout out to, of course, Dan and Dylan at Red Dragon and for supporting us. And hopefully starting to host a few more events coming up. Small, tight events, but starting to host events nonetheless. And then shout out to Martin over at Dyson Decks, whose birthday, I believe, was yesterday.
Ooh, happy birthday, Martin.
And to David Tistaminis and Hoyt up at Thunder Games and Gifts, our main sponsors. And, of course, the boys at Dream Tea for making us some sweet objective markers, which are selling like hotcakes right now.
Yeah, they're good because, so the old objective markers, we were playing with them for the first week leading up to this, and it's a lot different with the bigger markers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like there's so many things that can just barely reach the objective marker. And now I found I'm just on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a difference. I didn't realize, but it is a significant difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got 4 sets today because I coordinated some people together to get the shipping down. And I put my old one on top of the new one, and it's really a big difference.
Yeah, it's 40 millimeters.
It's 40 millimeter
different.
difference, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that big a difference. I was going to keep my my trusty Chris Haynes objective markers, but I might actually have to upgrade now.
It was a sad day, actually. My gaming table behind me, I took because you guys got me a set for the CanHammers, and I put them into a pile, and I put them in like the drawer of that wooden cabinet behind me, for those that can see, of just like the shame of all my old dice and templates and cards and all the crap that goes in there until I finally fill up another garbage can. Yeah, but it makes a huge difference because there's a lot of times where, especially with a lot of these scenarios, you need to get on the point turn 1, let's say, and that extra 40 mil it's an extra inch, right? Well, it's not an extra inch, but it's an extra, like, you basically have 1 less inch to get on it.
It also makes...
Well, it's 20 millimeters, so not quite an inch, but
Yeah,
almost.
like there's some
But it's like
missions-
you're either just off it or you're just on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to articulate that, but maybe I failed. There you go.
There's also some missions like the one in the game 2 on Saturday where the objectives are quite close, and so in that mission, two bikers held 2 objectives because their bases
Yes.
are long, because they're only 12-inch apart with the big objective, so it's like easily held by like 2 or 3 models. So it makes a big thing.
Yeah, but they're not as big as the AOS objectives, so they're not like obnoxious.
Oh,
Have you ever
those are
seen those?
massive,
You ever
yeah.
played on that game, Nick? Like where it's like the 12-inch objective markers or something crazy like that, and they just cover the whole table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
okay.
got one here if you're-
Frisbees on the table.
If you're
Yeah.
watching, I've got one here. It's bigger than my head. This is for AOS.
Yeah, I haven't played AOS in like over a year and a half.
Actually, I'm getting right up there too.
So Michael
Usually I got to
McEachern-
play for Adepticon, but I didn't.
Michael
this year.
McEachern, you can get these objective markers. Just Google Dream Tea CanHammer objective markers, and it'll take you straight to the page.
Yeah, it's something Dream Tea store /CanHammer.
Yeah. Dream Tea
Oh, yeah.
being DREAMTEE. Dream Tea.
Yeah, not the British tea.
Yep. So thanks to Raul for kicking out this merchandise pretty fast for us, as well as shirts and all this sort of thing. So as well as now also running a paving business. Did you see that? He started a paving business.
Oh yeah, he's an entrepreneur. That guy, he does quite a
Wow.
few different things. So I want to start off with, is this tournament leading up to it the one? It was a controversy and it caused all this drama. Was that we chose to not use the 10 points for painting? So why don't you take it away, Nick? What your thoughts were on that? That we didn't do the 10 battle for painted armies this time.
I didn't realize it was a controversy, but
Well, I was exaggerating for internet drama. It was actually
oh, okay. I mean, it was super heated. Yeah, no, I think because Ninth had just basically launched, and a bunch of us were intent on starting a new army, like run a new army for Ninth. It just didn't seem right to use that 10 points to judge who was going to win or who, we didn't want to penalize people that were still working on their armies, because the spirit of it is to have like people actively working on their armies, and if they can't finish, and you don't want to encourage people to just like finger paint their models and ruin them just to meet a little RTT. So we figured, we'll just get rid of the 10 points for this one. I don't know.
Do you guys think that was a good thing or a bad thing? I think Francois is against it.
Well,
Yeah.
not strongly, but yes.
That's
And
because he paints like an army
maybe
a
it's
day.
because I can paint 2,000 points in like a week and a half to a good standard.
The guy that's on the end of his 4-month vacation for the summer.
I did paint a lot this summer. I just, for me personally, I wasn't gonna fight you for it. I really don't care, and I don't. In fact, none of my games were decided by 10 points or less, except the one I played against Darren. And without spoiling the ending, both our armies were painted, so it would have made no difference. It's just that for me, the immersion is broken a little bit when the army is not painted. So it's just a personal preference. I'd rather play against a painted army, and if that 10-point rule incentivizes people to paint, I think that's great. Now, obviously, this tournament was the first tournament of ninth. It's an 8-person RTT. Who cares, really?
Yeah.
Just my personal preference and my opinion of that rule is I think it's a good rule for any tournament of any significance, let's say, which this was not, really.
So I was just double checking that I was still beating Darren with the 10 points.
Would you have?
Yeah, I was 14
I would have
ahead of
beaten
you or
Will
something.
more than I did, but yeah.
I agree. Generally, like I like to play against painted armies. It just felt
Oh, me
since
too.
since it was just the first one of the season, and I know a bunch of us, like I started a new army for ninth and whatever else, might not have painted models. It didn't seem right to penalize them this time, and maybe I don't know, like not maybe the next one or the one after it that we can start incorporating the 10 points, or as these get a little bit bigger and people outside of this core group start to participate, maybe the 10 points will be more important.
Yeah, I guess my biased opinion on that was that, the lists weren't finalized, and I wanted to paint stuff that I knew was in my list, so like something like Celestine or something that this is going to be in all my lists. So I was painting more of my troops and stuff. Whereas if you didn't want to paint like a unit of, I don't know, Dominions or something like that and be like, oh, these do not belong in my list. Right? So that was kind of my point of view. But I guess the next issue was that right before, and we didn't talk about this in the last cast, is the new terrain rules kind of dropped for player place terrain. So like when you bring a fortification, you can no longer place it within 3 inches of other terrain pieces. And so that essentially made a lot of terrain pieces invalid. What's your take on that, Francois?
Well, you would have definitely had room to place multiple of your terrain piece on the first table I played on. So.
Well, that's the thing. This tournament was very light on terrain.
We can talk a little bit more about that when we debrief my first game. But I think it's dumb, really. Basically, it means that these models that GW sells that are expensive, that have rules that you pay points for, on a good table, because a good table should be dense, you'll never be able to place. So they need to do something about that rule. It's just dumb. Or if not, then I think maybe tournament organizers need to find a way around it.
Yeah, or do player place, because it does say player place terrain in the rulebook.
Right, so something like that.
And that was interesting. This doesn't really spoil my game, but I played Jeremy, and we actually reset up our table after placing the objectives, because depending on the mission, that was one thing that we really realized is if because you don't really notice it at home because we're like sitting here and we'll nudge the terrain, whatever, we'll make it symmetrical. We don't really think about it. But when you're in a competitive environment, Jeremy and I came up to our last game and we were like, the objectives are all under ruins where they can't be. So we literally took all the terrain off, put the objectives down, and reset up the terrain as per the rule book. But that's not really that wasn't really covered in this tournament, right?
I think we should do that, and I'm going to start doing that on the stream when people come over. I'm just going to clear the table as best, like push it all to the side. It makes it much easier to place the objectives and measure it anyway. But then put the objectives down, and then just like lay the terrain out in even fashion around where the objectives are.
Because there is a potential of that.
Yeah. As opposed to trying to just put the objectives down around the buildings and then maybe nudging a few things here and there. I think you can just kind of, and then you have a bit more variety too.
I think that might be a little cumbersome as we like move forward with bigger GTs and majors. Is my opinion. I think a good compromise might be something like the top 100 tables at LVO. I thought that was really cool because I did play on them 1 or 2 rounds. And I thought that was a really neat compromise. That depending on the mission, it still, in a sense, players had to adjust the terrain, but it followed a certain map that the TOs had set up. As far as like the fortification question, like for this RTT, I was like, an advocate of the scooch method. So just place and scooch terrain aside, like, or just kind of ignore that 3-inch in a sense, reasonably. Like, be like, we're all friends, so it's all be reasonable about it. But yeah, that's something that has to be addressed later when you get to like a major or something. You can't rely on players being reasonable, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's why I completely dropped that piece from my army. I was like, screw that.
Yeah.
Well, and Darren didn't give it to me till the day of, and he wasn't willing. He wasn't willing to assemble it and paint it for me.
Could have, I guess. I could have. You didn't ask me to be honest.
No, I don't want you to assemble my model.
I
That's
would have
part of the
painted
fun.
gold. I would have painted gold. So.
Yeah. You go there, it's like the big sister Celestine statue, and he like just replaces it with a custodian.
Yeah, that's right.
The
Yeah,
Emperor.
It's just
Instead of gaining a faith die, I lose a faith die every turn.
Yeah.
Use my Christopher Walken model. Boom. There you
Gives
go.
you that imperial statue instead.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
one of those somewhere.
Well, she's creepy. The one actual model for that, the sister statue, it's like her feet just don't look right. Go look on the GW website if you don't believe me. It's awkward. Anyway, okay, so we'll get on to our army lists. I guess we'll start with you, Nick, because yours was, I guess, the one that nobody's heard about the most. So the other people know, but
Well, yeah, mine was the 8th edition kind of pally bomb list, essentially. So it was one detachment where I ran Drago, Voldus, and a brother captain with a silencer and a sword. I ran, was it 2 strike squads, a Terminator squad, Terminator out of silencer, 2 big paladin squads of 10 men each, one with the 4 side cannons, and then a purgation squad with 4 silencers. And the powers, like Voldus had all the Imperial or Santic, the new book powers, and then the other powers of the older, the Codex powers were all spread amongst everybody else. And then the kind of little cheeky thing was the brother captain had inner fire. So I was like, he was my kind of suicide dude in case I needed that to happen.
So this is different from the list you played at our launch day, where you just had the very prototypical strike squads and paladin bombs. Now you got a purgation squad, you got a Terminator squad. So did those changes? Why did you make those 2 changes?
I'm still playing around with it. So the Terminator squad, because I wanted an OBSEC unit that was a little tougher than just strike squads, and depending on the matchup, they would either start on the table if there was a risk of them getting shot at, because I needed somebody to sit on my objective if there was one in my deployment zone, but would still allow my paladin squads to move forward and take the mid. So if they don't start on the table, then I have nobody sitting back, just the way the character rules work now, right, to sit on that objective. So I need somebody to sit there. But if somebody has like artillery or whatever else, the strike squad will just get wiped out instantly. Whereas the Terminator squad, I can at least, they can stay a little bit, and then if they don't have, if the enemy doesn't have any LOS, like non-LOS shooting, strike squad can stay there. Then Terminators could deep strike, and then I found like having 3 strike squads, like the OBSEC wasn't that important. So for almost the same price, I could get a purgation squad that all have weapons that, in the tide of shooting or whatever it's called, are strength 5, D3 plus 1 damage. So like it could be okay for like cheeky. Like it happened against a couple of people where I throw some shots and they roll a couple 1s and 2s on their saves, and then like their 4 wound models, I pull 3 off in one shot because I roll, 5 plus or whatever. So it's kind of for the same price as a strike squad. Kind of just a bit of extra cheeky shooting. And actually, when I played Jeremy, that purgation squad was pretty good. They removed his inceptors off one shot, which was like something I really needed. And then the other kind of tech piece was I dropped the librarian when we played during the game day for the brother captain, because I just really wanted to have the ability to send smites 24 inches, because otherwise I didn't. And I felt like I'd like to have that threat, especially against Custodes, because I knew you were going to be there, right? And it was one of the few ways I was going to be able to sneak at least some damage through all the 2+ saves, the transhuman, the ignore AP 1 and 2, ignore rerolls, and whatever else. And then he also has inner fire, so if like somebody gets up in my face that I need to get rid of right away, he has the Santic Shard, so he can get up to like +3 to cast, reroll cast, and then you end up with like 10, 12 mortal wounds that you can dish to one target. So that's kind of neat. And
Oh
so
yeah, that would hurt the Golden Boys, man.
Yeah,
They
that
don't
sounds
like
horrible.
mhm. Yeah. So
Okay.
that was the list.
Great. So move over to the Ultramarines.
Ultra, ultra,
Francois, did you
ultra.
take
Well,
a different list or anything exciting?
no, I think people who have watched the streams have seen the list before because I played it against you. I played it against Darren. I still like it a lot, but just very quickly, it's a Gulliman, a Tigurius, a Chaplain. Then that supports 2 units of infiltrators and 1 unit of incursors, which is actually the small change that I made. So I have 3 units that can infiltrate pre-battle. I think that's really, really important in ninth. And then 10 aggressors, 2 squads of 5, Graph Devastators, and a Relic Scorpius, rounding out the sort of anti-tank / artillery portion of the list.
So you replaced the Eradicators with the Grav guys.
Yeah, so I did some math and I thought about it, and Eradicators are very, very good. But if you're only going to bring 1 squad for the same points, taking gravitic amplifications into account, Grav Devastators are better. If you only have the 1 squad, as soon as you go to 2, then you're better off with Eradicators.
How do they compare points wise?
So they're exactly the same points, 120, 120. But the Graph Devs, when they drop with the Cherub, which is included in the 120, they throw down 20 shots. 8 of those will be hitting on 2s. With gravitic amplification, you're rerolling your wounds and your damage. With Ultramarines, if you're not in any reroll auras, you can pay a CP to give them reroll 1s as well. So the damage output on pretty much any target you can think of will be higher for that first round of shooting anyway from Graph Devs than from Eradicators. But that's only true for the 1 squad. As soon as you go to more than that, you can only Grav Amp 1 of them, right? So that was my thinking behind it.
Once they get 2 wounds, baby.
Yeah.
And I guess generally online, and I think when Jason, I've played him a couple times. I think you played him. He brings his Grav Debs in a drop pod. Why did you choose to not bring the drop
I chose
pod?
not to bring them in the drop pod because a couple of reasons. First, and maybe this is from playing Darren too much, but for me, drop pods are a bit of a trap because if you drop the drop pod too close to someone, they can just charge it, have one guy in range, just slap it a little bit, and then the drop pod is stuck there with people in combat and you can't shoot anymore. And against some armies, that is just devastating. And the drop pod does cost like 60 odd points, which you can use elsewhere. And what I did instead was infiltrate the Grav Devs. They have good enough range that coming on a board edge, they will be able to hit pretty much whatever you want them to without having to drop in a pod. And I want them coming in turn 2 anyway, because as Ultramarines on turn 2, they count as not having moved. And so I wouldn't bring them in turn 1 in a drop pod. So that's one big advantage of the drop pod that I wouldn't be using anyway.
It's a lot of good reasons. I guess we'll move on to the Golden Boys. Because you tried something new, right, Darren?
Yeah.
Something that's different.
Yeah, so I've been struggling mostly 2 things. One is level of aggression, and that was another struggle on Saturday. But the other was just having enough units. And it's tough. Normally, my previous list only had like 5 units, not including characters, and so it's hard to hold stuff. It's hard to screen. So I actually, and you know me, I don't play soup. So I actually snuck the sisters in there, rejigged a little bit, a couple of cheeky rhinos, retasked from the Dark Angels Lions Blade Strike Force, since I have like 10 of them.
Spray paint them gold, done.
Done. Literally took me like 4 hours to paint 15 sisters and 3 rhinos. And then just trying to relearn how to use these kind of cheeky little troops inside of transports. And then still allows me to bring 3 good-sized hammer units and the 3 characters that I need. And so I thought that was a pretty strong, balanced list, actually. So that's what I brought just to try it out. Those were my first 3 games with that list. And I like it. I've made some changes since. But I think it performed pretty well. The sisters did what they were supposed to, which was stand places. And the rhinos were actually super performers. Super performers. And I didn't even use them as well as I could have. Afterwards, I'm thinking, I could have done that. So I was pretty happy with those little changes. And the Custodes part of the army just performed like the Custodes part of the army did. So it seemed to work pretty good. So basically my list was Trajan, tripped out biker cat, all the usual
That guy's
stuff.
a nightmare.
I decided at the last minute to stick with the Unstoppable Destroyer trait, which allows you to pile and consolidate up to 6 inches in any direction. which just
pretty
it's just
good,
too
man.
good. It's just too good. It was
it's
either
pretty
that
good.
or CP regen because I start with 8, which is kind of low, but I didn't find that was a problem, so I'm glad I stuck with that because the Unstoppable Destroyer came in handy many times. And then 5 Alaris Terminators, 5 Aquilon Terminators, Fat Boys, 5 Salvo Launcher Bikes, and the 2 units of base Prosecutor Sisters with 2 basic Rhinos.
Good stuff. I guess that goes to the nuns with guns. So I tried a lot of different things actually for this tournament. This is one of the first games in a while that I took 2 detachments. So I took a battalion and a vanguard. It put me on too few CP, if I'm being honest up front, and it was not a good idea. But anyway, so I took Valoris Heart battalion with my 3 troops, just so they'd ignore -1 and get a feel no pain. I took 3 Retributor squads, one with 4 multi-meltas and 2 of them with 2 multi-meltas. And then in that detachment, I just put Celestine, so that I would get like 3 CP back for that. And then the next one, I took the St. Catherine. I took a Canoness with a few different items. I used to give her the sword, is basically the Teeth of Terror, but for the sisters. But I switched it out for a pistol that does 2 damage at 18-inch range, and it was probably not worth it as well. And then I took 3 units of Repentia, 1/6, 1/7, 1/9, and 2 units of Celestine's Guard, and that was about my list.
So you didn't have a Smash Canoness. I was all scared of that chick in combat.
Well, she's not smashy against you, right? Like that's the interest. Like nothing in my army can fight anything in your army head to head.
That walking coffin is a bit weird.
Yeah, it throws a lot of people off because it's only toughness 3, but it's -1 to hit. But it's got 4 up invul, so it does tank things. But yeah, it was an interesting list. I just found that I didn't have enough CP to do what I wanted to do. I was trying to put the Repentia off the board, and taking 2 detachments and outflanking my Repentia most games, well, 2 of them, was just way too much CP gone.
Yeah, you were out really early in our game.
Every game. I started most game with 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
That's
enough.
too little. For a new codex, that's too little. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't do anything. And it's interesting because I didn't test it out before the tournament. So I was like, I just kind of theory hammered it. So I've gone back since then to the 1 battalion, Bloody Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I had a Magifier too that I forgot to mention, but
because it cost you what, like 3 CP to outflank everything that you outflanked?
Against you, I believe it was 4.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. That was a mistake though. Yeah. Yeah, so I took a lot of MSU stuff. I did a lot of outflanking, and I paid a lot of points for that. And we'll get to that at the end, the things that I decided to change and why. So I guess we can kind of go through the games, but we'll go super brief if you guys don't mind. So we'll go in the continuous order. So we'll start with you, Nick. Game 1.
Game 1, I played against James and his Alpha Legion. Yeah, so to be fair, I don't know if James has the same kind of experience as I do in tournaments, and also Alpha Legion going kind of mono chaos any book right now is kind of hamstringing yourself a little bit, especially against an army like Grey Knights. And since I have played Alpha Legion quite a bit, I knew basically all of his tricks. And yeah, so he had a couple units of Havocs. He had a unit of Obliterators, a bunch of like MSU Chaos Marines, and 2 Daredeo Dreadnoughts. The Daredeos I weren't too worried about because they're damage 2, like low AP. So if ever was worried about it, I would just -1 damage from their shooting. The biggest threat was the Oblits, but they would drop in and I could smite them. That's another reason why I wanted that 24-inch smite, because they're demon keyword, so 3 smites and they were gone.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. The big issue was actually, and him and I had been chatting before. I was like, I don't know about your las cannon Havocs, if you should have those or whatever. He's like, oh, I like them. I was okay. And then when we played, I was like, yeah, you should keep those, because that kind of chip damage was kind of scary, because I don't have other than transhuman, but I don't want to be popping transhuman left, right, and center because it's a lot of CP. It's like you could end up losing 1 or 2 pallies per unit of Havocs just because they're las cannons. Anyways, so long story short, yeah, because I knew basically his tricks, I took out the Havocs, and he struggled to be able to like pull units of mine off, and it came up to a big win for me. I don't know if it was like 84 to 25 or 30 or something like that in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Good job. So big win to you. Going to Francois.
So my game one was against Knights, which going into I wasn't too worried about, but I then faced a bit of a 1-2-3 punch of circumstance where I was on the by far lightest terrain table on Dawn of War deployment, and you actually really noticed the narrower table on Dawn of War, like only having 10 inches instead of 12. Actually, I felt that was a pretty big deal. Going second. Despite that, I thought I could still pull it off, but then I made a few positioning errors. Like I mismeasured where my aggressors were, so Gallant was able to make a 10-inch charge into them. I thought I placed them out of range, but that was me spacing out. So he makes the 10-inch charge into the aggressors, kills those. That's all he kills turn one, so I'm still feeling okay. My turn one, I put all the shootings I had on the table. I had outflanked a bunch of stuff because of the terrain. I put all the shooting I had on the table on the Gallant, do maybe 6 or 8 wounds, like not much. Then I charge Gulliman into the Gallant because that's the only heavy response unit I have at that point. Gulliman bounces off the Gallant. Well, actually, brings him low to his bottom bracket, but still, I was expecting Gulliman to do a tiny bit more than that. Got a little bit unlucky, even using rerolls and stuff. Then the Gallant fights Gulliman. The Gallant bounces off Gulliman. So I'm like, all right, we're good. But now he uses Death Grip. Now the sequence of event for that to work though is about a 20% chance for this to happen, right? Because he has to hit with the Death Grip. He's bracketed at that point, so this Gauntlet hits on 5. So he has to hit with the Gauntlet, which he does. Then we go to a roll off, and I lose 5 roll offs in a row for Gulliman to die to the Gallant.
Is it roll off just straight up roll or against leadership?
You add your strength, and if I equal or beat him or roll a 6, I'm out. So out of 5 rolls, odds are I get out. Never mind the fact that he only hits on 5. So again, like working out the odds of that happening is pretty low, but it's a dice game. It happens. Like I'm not actually mad about it. Thinking back on it, it's pretty funny that Gulliman got strangled to death by a Gallant.
By an almost dead knight.
Yeah, and then
kind of makes sense though.
His turn two, he kills everything I have except Tigurius. My one model left on the table at that point is Tigurius. My turn 2, my reserves all come into the board. I kill everything except the Valiant. So now he has one model, and I have my 3 reserve units, which is how I managed to keep it close. But the Valiant, because I needed to be within 24 to hit him with my my Grav Devs, he kills those. He kills the Inceptors. By the end, I have aggressors. He has a Valiant. We can't score. Neither of us can score because that mission was hold 2 to score. So neither of us can score. So we end with a very, very low, like 44 to 30 score, I think. So ends in a loss for me. Pleasant game though. It was fine, I guess, because I was off the table by turn 2, so I was just laughing about it and having a good time by then. But a bit of a disappointing result because I thought my list should handle Knights much better. And I think on any other deployment with more terrain or going first, like I needed all 3 of these things to go against me to feel uncertain about that game. But it is what it is. So game 1 ends in a loss. Some funny moments though, so at least I'm not too bitter about that.
So let's go back a bit because there was an article by Goonhammer just released about going first and the impact. Nick, did you go first game 1?
I can't recall, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, in my game, going first was definitely a big deal. I'm pretty sure if I go first, I walk with an easy win there. Because then my reserves just come in a turn faster, right? So that's the thing. So all he killed in his first turn of activation is 5 aggressors. So imagine I go first. I would have positioned in a way that even if I make the same mistake and let the aggressors be charged, he kills 1 unit, and then all my reinforcements come in. So it's a big deal. If there had been more terrain, though, the impact is much lessened. So I think on a heavy table, going first is not nearly as potent. But because the table was a bit empty, and that's on me because I didn't realize there was a central table of terrain we could have picked from to add to the table. So I just walked to the table and look at it and go, what is this? Because there was like 4 pieces of line of sight blocking on the table, and they're all tiny. I'm like, I can't hide anywhere on this table.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But
sure.
I should have realized or just walked over to the central table of terrain and just grabbed more pieces to put them on. But anyway, so that was my game 1.
Me and Chris completely redid our table.
We didn't add pieces, but all of our pieces were like unplayable. They were like closed, big square buildings. They were like, we can't move through those. So anyway, Darren, so that was a spoiler. You played me, so why don't you take us through?
So I just want to point out we didn't know the missions before. Like Dan literally just rolled them each round. So, but we did know who our matchups were the night before. So I was kind of swatting up on sisters, because I don't think I haven't played you actually, Chris, for a long time, and I don't think I've ever played against your sisters.
No,
because we didn't play at the launch
maybe
day.
in the old, maybe
Long time
like
ago. Yeah.
like in my basement at the beginning of 8th edition. I think we played.
So I'm always scared of playing Chris because obviously he's a good player, and the sisters I've heard, although I never played against them, were strong because lots of bodies doing all the things that I can't do, holding space, fairly hard to kill, although T3 girls, but surprisingly hard to kill. A lot of bodies, and Repentia have a reputation for sure, and well deserved probably, and a lot of Melta guns, which either will table me or bounce, and that's just the curse of the Melta.
And they actually bounced, believe it or not.
They bounced hard against.
I shot all my Melta guns into your captain for two turns, I think it was. Then I finally killed him in close combat with the shrine.
Yeah, like that's the thing. You got four. Let's say you got 4 Meltas. You'll miss like 1 to 2 of them. Then one will roll a 1 on the wound, and then now you're left with 1, and there's a 3-up involved, and so you end up bouncing. Right? It's like that's just the way of Meltas. 2 shots would be way better, obviously. So I think Meltas would make a bit of a.
And I was saving a 5 and a 6 for that.
Yeah.
To be like 6 wounds, 5 wounds. But
I noticed that. So
I was saving those I was saving them 3 turns, waiting for that.
Yeah, so I think I went first in our game. We both picked a crappy secondary, so that kind of evened itself out. And
Thank God we both picked a crappy secondary.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been like a nightmare.
I think so. And then I had to I was trying to judge my level of aggression, and I think I was too aggressive when I felt like, as you said afterwards, I should have played less aggressive and just banked on my toughness and let you come to me. I let you into my backfield, which I didn't have to do at all. I played my sisters like they were combat monsters for some reason, and they totally did not need to do that. So those were the 2 kind of big mistakes that eventually lost a tight game. But yeah, it was a good game for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. So I guess with that, we go on to round 2.
So my round 2 was against Jeremy because I think him and I scored we're the top in points for scoring. This reminds me that it had been since March or whatever since I played in a tournament and kind of had that tournament mindset because I came in this game all screwed up. So I knew Jeremy's list and what it did. He played Dark Angels, and it kind of had 2 units Eradicators, 2 units of Blade Guard, and an Impulsor with the Dome, some Incursors, a bunch of units of the new Assault Intercessors.
3 of them.
A unit of Inceptors, Plasma Inceptors, and a unit of Aggressors, and Azrael, and some other Dark Angels character. Like, I don't know Dark Angels well, but I kind of knew,
Asmodai.
Oh, and Asmodai, and the Judiciar, actually, or whatever, the Judicar new guy.
Judiciar. You had it right the first time.
Yeah, Judiciar. Yeah, I've never played against that. Anyway, so a lot of bottom line, he outplayed me. I'm not going to come up with too many excuses here, but a lot of it had to do with kind of inexperience with the missions. So we had learned at the end of the game that this was the mission where you could leave objectives and still maintain control of them while not being on them unless the control had been taken away.
None of us played that properly.
No, I know. And
we're all idiots, yeah.
And when you run an army that has just a couple of elite units, that's an important little detail because you realize you can leave the objectives. And it was one of those missions where you have to hold 2 minimum to score 5 points. So that's another tougher one. I was like, okay, so with his MSU OBSEC, he's got the advantage. And I kind of screwed the pooch on the secondaries. So I still got in this head this victim mentality of the Abhor the Witch for Grey Knights. So I'm obviously know he's taking that. We joked about it. And I'm like, okay, well, again, lack of experience with these. I was like, do I take a psychic one to counterbalance that? So I was like, I kind of went into the game let's test, right? Let's test this, see. So I took mental interrogation. And that's the one where you have to... Yeah, it's bad.
It's bad. I took it in a practice game as well, and it was
And I need to make the same mistake 47 times before I learn. So yeah, this was number around there. So anyways, I took that, And another one, a mistake I took was it can work sometimes. I took it against James was while we stand we fight, because my characters are like, they're infantry characters. They have 2+ saves, higher than normal wounds, so they have to live or whatever, and deploy scramblers. And then we roll off, and I won the roll, but I was like, do I go second on this one or should I go first? And I was looking at the ranges and whatever else, and I let him go first. And like, he didn't kill much of mine. He killed like 2 paladins or whatever. So I was like, okay, not a big deal. But I feel now like, had I gone first with my ability to gate and shoot out of line of sight, I actually could have done quite a bit more and established a stronger kind of position on the, like, threatening on the board, putting him on the back foot, making him, like, forcing him to deal with me rather than the opposite. Because then I could have just, like, thrown the 40 strength 6 AP1 2 damage, ignore cover shots into his aggressors, and like, I think 60% chance I lift all those aggressors turn 1, and then I don't have to worry about them. So bottom line, anyways, the game goes, he pushes up, I try to respond. It's not looking well for me because he's got all that Melta, the Plasma Inceptors, because they're damage 3 from Dark Angels. I actually do a lot more damage than the Ultramarine ones, so I'm losing a lot of Paladins. And the nail in the coffin for that game was I made a charge with some Paladins into his aggressors and Eradicators, but his Judiciary was hiding behind a building. Like, I didn't see the model. Yeah, and I didn't have any CP left. And it just shows in my inexperience with working with that model. And then his aggressors were able to go first, and I didn't have the points to fight on death and pull his aggressors with mine. So anyways, that was a nail in the coffin. And again, part of my it's been a long time since I played the tournament, and kind of this was like a one-day tournament. I was like, oh, okay, you know what, you won, let's call it, let's just wrap it up and whatever else. And it was like at that point 13 points that I had or whatever else, whereas like if we had played it out and whatever else, I could have gotten another 30 points just from deploy scramblers, a couple of mental interrogations, and a couple on the primary. And I learned, well, not to spoil, but if I had done that, it would have changed a bit of things, at least standings wise.
Of course.
But
of course.
Yeah. And then, at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? No, that's a good lesson again for me to play out my games, get as many points, because it's, it still could impact how you end up in the standings, regardless of whether, you lose. So anyways,
it also changes who you play, right?
Yeah, no,
so
for
you
sure.
You might have played your last game against a different person, for all we know.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, bottom line, Jeremy pushed my shit in, for lack of a better term, and he played a good game. Yeah,
it's a good term for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
Francois?
So my second game was against Darren, so we can knock 2 birds with 1 stone there again. And it's funny because it was on a mission that we had played the week before on stream. And it's that game where 6 objective markers, I infiltrated on all of them. I planted 5 banners turn 1, like on stream, and just crushed them that game.
Yeah.
So we roll the mission, we look at it, and Darren and I both go, all right, so we're feeling good for the Ultramarines here. And I was feeling good for the Ultramarines. Maybe Darren was feeling even better for the Ultramarines because he kept complaining the whole time that he was going to lose. And so the game starts in much the same way, because I go first. I put my infiltrating units on the objectives. I plant my banners. I do what I think I should do. But Darren, having learned his lesson from the last time we played that mission, was not nearly as passive this time around. And he pushed me back pretty hard. And so we had a really, really good game. I do think the addition of the Rhinos and the Sisters is really good, because it freed up some, because we also played it wrong. And so we thought we had to stay on the objectives. But the Sisters and the Rhinos did that, right, for Darren. So the bulk of his army is moving forward towards me, doing it really well. We have a really tight, good game. I was a little too passive with Gulliman. I think if I move Gulliman up to midfield a turn earlier, it's probably a different game. And it basically came down to, well, actually, I'll let Darren explain his perfect turn that he needed to win and how it went down. Darren, you needed that perfect turn. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so like as Francois said, I started on the line. I on the lined my whole army in this mission versus last time where I hid like Hidehammer. And so first turn, I knew if I didn't get on at least 2 of these objectives, I'm just losing like last time. So that's what I did. So this was what, turn 3 or top of 4 or something like that, Francois.
Bottom of 3, I think.
I needed Alaris to make like a 8-inch or 9-inch charge onto the Chappie.
No, bottom of 4. Yeah.
Bottom of 4, yeah. So I needed the Alaris to make like a 9-inch charge or something onto the Chaplain and the Relic Scorpius. Not really for the Relic Scorpius, but to get onto his Francois' objective. I also needed that to get my last scramblers, because I needed to get my Alaris into his zone. And then I needed Trajan to make it all the way back to kill these freaking
the Inceptors.
Who just been a pain in the ass the whole game.
Well,
Trajan needed a 7.
Yeah, so Trajan needed a 7-inch charge
a 9
to get to these Inceptors. And then what was the last charge? I had 3
you
charges.
had you needed a Rhino to contest an objective that Tigris was on, I think.
I didn't have to make a charge for something for that.
Well, you needed a 3rd charge. You needed
I needed
3
a
charge.
3rd charge as well. That was like a 7 or 8, and I made all 3 of them. And then I also needed to Tanglefoot G-Man so he couldn't come and wipe my Alaris Terminators, and I did. I rolled a 6 on that Tanglefoot, so G-Man failed the charge.
Yeah, failed like a 3-inch charge.
Tanglefoot is so nasty.
I also
man.
had to survive like 3 rounds with those 4 aggressors.
So the aggressors needed to not kill you so you could scramble.
So that I could scramble, because you can still fight and do an action. So I managed to get the Scrambler done, which was 10 points, which was kind of like what I needed to kind of win it.
Well, you won by less than 10, so yes.
Yeah,
that was the difference.
Yeah. So it was really that long bomb there, and Trajan getting back to boot the Inceptors off, which helped, because then they took a surprisingly long time to kill 5 sisters.
Yeah, they're not good in combat. They shoot well, but in combat they only have 2 attacks apiece.
Yeah, so those sisters held up well as well on that midfield objective. So, so
the sisters were definitely MVP there, I think.
Yeah, and that Rhino getting me recon for like 4
That's
turns
true.
in a row,
Yeah.
winding around, blocking people, getting me recon. It was so useful. And Francois can't spare any time to shoot like a freaking Rhino.
Not when I have Terminators in my face.
Yeah, so it's so good. It's just like blocking people's movement and getting recon all over the place. Yeah, it's really good for that.
But it was actually kind of fun in a way to see everything you needed happen, because we talked it out before the turn, and you said, okay, I can win this if this, and this happens. And then all the dice lined up for you, and it was kind of beautiful in a way that it all worked out.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a good game.
It's only beautiful if you like golden people, but...
Well, I mean, it's nice to see that Darren thought it through, did the math, went, okay, this is what I need to win, and put himself in a position to do as best he could. Take the dice out of the equation. So dice are dice, right? You'll roll hot, you'll roll cold, but he knew what needed to happen. And sure, it was unlikely that it was all going to line up, but it could have, and it did. So in a way, I think that's kind of to his credit that he was like, okay, I need this to happen. Let's see if it does, and it did.
That's great. No, yeah, that's good. And Custodies could kind of do it too, because they hit like a ton of bricks, right? So it's not unlikely that they do win those combats and clear you off of them, and which is pretty cool. So I guess my game 2 was against the Knights that Francois played round 1, and I had very similar to Francois. It light table went second, and turn 1 he pushed into me, took out not a lot of my army, actually a couple models here or there.
You have
one
more
Repentia
screening than I
unit.
do. I think that.
Yeah, but and then my return fire did 0 wounds to his army turn 1.
Ooh.
Like 0. But I don't have a lot of fire, but I have melted guns. But yeah, it didn't do anything. And I was like, this ain't good. So from that point on, I didn't even play the killing game. I killed his Helverines, and actually I wrapped them with sisters so I couldn't get shot in the backfield. And I literally was just suiciding units to take his objectives away and deny primary points. And like Celestine, because like against a Night Titan, like Celestine can just move on to that objective, and you need 2 to score, and she can just go onto it. Nope, you don't get that. And with 3 Knights running around the board, the most he could take is 3, and then I would just take the objectives away from him and contest like 2 of them. And so I ended up actually winning a decent win, not like crazy, but it was 18 points or 16 points or something like that. And it was just solely on, it was almost like just on shenaniganry.
Well, that's the issue with Knights is if there's if you need to hold 2, it's kind of hard when you have 5 models in your army, right?
Yeah, and those Halverines gave me an in.
So,
And also
like-
because it was the diagonal deployment, he
Yeah.
moved them up to take the side kind of objectives.
Right,
But
right.
that means when I outflank my sisters, I can just go right within.
They're right there. Yeah.
Like as long as I'm in my deployment zone, I can be basically as close as I want to you.
Mhm.
And then it was like short charges in, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that part. Of
I
the
reminded
training.
you.
Dude. That's
Yeah,
such a
it's
huge
It's
change to the
huge.
rules.
You totally forgot.
I reminded you before you moved your bikes because that's the kind of guy I am.
Like I was tempted to bring 2 repention units into my zone because this knight was in my zone and just double charge it. And then I was like, why? I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
Go over there. That's huge. Yeah, you could even start in combat. So with that, and that was actually, if we go back to game 1, I made a mistake against Darren. Is I assumed I was going to kill his bike captain. So I put the Repentia in between them and a unit, and then he tangle foot me, and I failed the charge. When I could have literally just started them in base with them and been like, it's done. Or at least an inch away.
That was
it's
also
pretty
a
cool.
6-inch Tanglefoot, which was great.
Yeah, you did that against me too. So.
Yeah, Tanglefoots are
That's
so good.
That's nasty. And like I can auto pass charges too. I had like a 5 and a 4 or
Yeah.
something with +1 to charge, and he rolled that 6, and I was like, oh wow, I missed it by 1 inch, I think, or something crazy. I can't remember, but it was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah. So I ended up beating the Knights. It was kind of stressful in a good way, I guess, in the fact that like I was just losing my models. Like at the end of the game, I had like 3-4 models alive, but it was just constant objective. You know, Celestine contests. Oh, you kill her. She gets back up, contests, and he scored 15 primary turn 1, and then 0 primary for the rest of the game.
Well, in our game also, like he tabled me basically, but I kept him to a 44-point win. Like that's the problem with Knights right now. And I say this as someone who played Knights competitively for over a year. I love Knights. I know them really well. They really struggle in playing the mission. Like they need something. They either need to be like to have a rule. I think they should have a rule where they count as 10 OPSEC models. Like at least that would
Or 1
go-
OPSEC model. What is just one? Why do they need to count as 10? Just 1 OPSEC model.
Because when you have 5 models in your arm, okay, so maybe I say that as a
But there's
biased
not
Knight
that
guy.
much OPSEC
I've got
people,
like
right?
5,000 points of Knights in that cabinet, including some Forge World.
Some number between 1 and 10
But
offset
there should be
models.
some.
But I'm just saying,
OPSEC, yes.
like let's not go from it counts as 1 normal model to 10 OPSEC. Like let's just take the leap and go to OPSEC maybe.
Let's start with that and see where we go.
Yeah,
But they,
you know?
they need. My point is they need something because right now they're kind of trash.
They are and they aren't, right?
They'll still kill
They
you.
kill. That's the
yeah.
issue.
They'll
The
still
other
kill
thing
you.
is if you make them able to score, like he killed a lot of my army in what like the reason he wasn't killing anymore is because I was just had very few models in ruins hidden.
Yeah.
Like that knight army shot off my whole army, and it wasn't even that shooty of a knight list.
Well, when we
Good,
had our stream day for the release day, I played a similar list that I wanted with a Valiant as well against Nick, and he can attest to the kind of damage it can do. Like Knights still do that, but I think they're just bad at playing the mission. Maybe if you play like lots of Armigers, like the Forge World ones with the lightning locks or whatever they're called, maybe have some play. I don't really want to buy like 9 Forge World mini Knights. I'm not gonna, but
Yeah.
maybe.
He might have won if he would have
Black
played
Legion,
conservative. Though.
Give him that Black Legion strat that makes them all super OPSEC, like more OPSEC than other OPSEC stuff.
Yeah, but then I'd have to put spikes on all my Knights. I don't want to do that.
You don't have to necessarily. Just because you're chaos doesn't mean you.
No, I
have
mean
spikes
like
on.
give the Night Book that style strat because Chaos.
Oh,
Knights
I
don't-
see what you mean. Yeah.
Chaos Knights don't have that because they can't be Black Legion.
Yeah. No, I think it's really. I guess yeah. If the train would have been heavier, I feel like it would have been a lot better. For like
still ultra killy. Like
they're like ultra kill. They're almost too killy. The fact that's what I'm saying. Like if they can get into you, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And I don't have the firepower like my orcs did. Let's say to drop a knight a turn. Like I was putting I'm putting 6 multi-meltas into you. Like you might not die.
Mm-hmm.
No. Well,
You
once
probably
multi-meltas are 2 shots, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's a big difference. That's
yeah,
a big.
that's going to be a big difference. But with 4-up invuln, you could easily do nothing with that many multi-meltas for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You're only wounding on 4s too, so.
So we'll go on to the last round 3. Go to Nick.
Well, I played Knights. So so this mission was the Hammer and Anvil deployment where each person got an objective in their zone, and then the two other objectives were mid table where they were like close to the long edges.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, knowing that he had the gallant that can like run super fast and charge just about anywhere on the table, like outside of me backlining my whole army, which would put me out of the game for quite a while because my infantry characters can't sprint that fast to catch up with the rest of the army. I had to put my paladins on the line and say, okay, well, let's go, let's see what happens. So that's what I did with the typical deep striking elements. I rolled to go first. But I'm like, okay, well, I'll take it to try to get some forward board presence and to get some damage. Maybe I can down a knight. But I ran into kind of some issues too because, like, I got some good shooting, but it's not like unless the knight is in this one perfect spot where I can get all the guns on him. I'm only at 24-inch range, and we're talking hammer and anvil. I was able to get some side cannons on the Valiant, and like you have to spend all kinds of CP to reroll wounds and whatever, and it's only -1 AP. So like, I did a bunch of wounds, but he saved a bunch, and I only think pulled like 8 or 10 wounds off that Valiant. I'm like, oh man, that's not good. And especially now, since Grey Knights don't have the unlimited 5 warp charge 5 cast smites, I can't just smite a knight off the table because they get much harder. And then he also had the Calexis Assassin, so when the Calexis showed up, that made casting a lot harder. So, like, my turn 1, I put 2 mortal wounds on his Gallant, and then 8 wounds on the Valiant. I'm like, oh, dear God, here we go. The Gallant comes in. Between the Gallant charging the Paladins and him shooting, he pulled, I think it was, 11 Paladins off the board or something like that, turn 1. And I'm like, this is going belly up. Like, the Gallant at the end of turn 1 I've got 4 Paladins left into the Gallant. And then I think it was 6. Yeah, it was even more. 5 left of the shooty ones, facing the Valiant. But basically, what I ended up doing is my inner fire guy, he must have pulled 30 wounds off of knights that game because I just had him chasing knights and inner firing, and that's my only trick because but again, side cannons into the Valiant, pulled off some wounds, trying to use the spacing for Paladins to choose where the smites are coming from, and so I was able to slowly whittle them down, and then Paladins in combat were able to chip a couple wounds. So that's basically what it was. So eventually I got rid of the Valiant and the Gallant, and then I had still enough between smites because that's when the reserves were coming in to kill his Gallant. I ended up tabling him, and it ended up being a big win for me at the end, 75 to 30 or something. But it was very close. It was very close to me losing that because of how killy he was, and he was just pulling Paladins off nonstop. If I was not able to pull the Valiant and the Gallant off turn 2, I would have lost, hands down.
Oh yeah, they do so much work. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Francois, your last game?
My last game was against James's Alpha Legion, Nick's round 1 opponent. And, I think my list matches up really well against his.
Oh, yeah.
And by then I was also tired, and I was just like, all right, I want this to be over quickly, so we'll just throw caution to the wind. I deployed everything on the line. So did he. Then I went first. I advanced a unit of aggressor in range. Tigerius super smited 5 Havocs off the table, turn 1. And then the aggressors picked up the other 2 squads. And, I laugh now. It wasn't much of a game because I just moved all my stuff up. Turn 1, picked up all 3 of his damage dealers or his Havoc units. I pulled all 3 off the table. He had 2 Derridios. I don't care about those. He's going to shoot into aggressors. I'll transhuman. Nothing's going to happen. Turn 2, I dropped my Inceptors. I dropped my Grav Devs. I dropped my other unit of aggressors. And by turn 3 was over, basically.
Wow. Darren, your last game?
So I got to play Granddaddy Will Paul.
I know. I was excited. I'm like, one of us has to play him because his list
wanted
was
that
neat.
matchup.
I did. So of all the P&Ps and events that we run here, of which Will goes to I think every single one of them, I've never played Will. And You know, I've
Yeah,
always wanted to play
he
Will.
told me he never wanted to play you, so that's why he dodged you.
That's probably avoiding it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to play Will and his Death Guard. Now, Death Guard are pretty scary. His list was perhaps not the most optimized Death Guard
His list is not that scary.
but he had this crazy Mortarian bomb,
Sorry,
basically. So, you know, Morty with six of those, whatever, Guardian Terminator guys.
Death Shroud Terminators.
Yeah, that eat wounds for him. So basically, like trying to kill Morty is
pretty
very,
good.
very difficult. And then on top of that, he had 10 Blight Lord Terminators, which are so hard to kill. A huge block of Plague Marines, which are also hard to kill. They didn't do any damage, but so hard to kill. And then a bunch of zombies just to hold objectives. And so my game plan was to hold his whole army up on one of the midfield objectives, try and get Morty to go there, and just survive long enough so that my biker captain and my unit of bikes can go around and cap objectives. That was my whole game plan, because I knew I would not be able to kill his army, and I would be difficult enough to kill. If you think my army's hard to kill, just give my whole army a 5-up Feel No Pain, and then now you know what Death Guard is like. So it was we were just bashing each other on the head, and nobody's dying. And then Morty comes in, hits me for 57 attacks, 39 wounds at AP -2. It's just 1 damage, but that's still 39 wounds at AP -2. So, like, he just obliterates everything he's touching. He's flying around, and my biker cap manages to cap his objective on the last couple of turns, and then he gets obliterated by Morty. I just did enough to stay ahead by, like, 6 points.
Nice.
But yeah, like it took me 4 turns to kill 10 Blight Lord Terminators. And then 2 of those guys hit me back for 20 attacks. I'm like, what is going on here?
The flail guys. Yeah.
Oh man,
They're good. Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, and then I had 3 Terminators left, and I'm like, woohoo! And then Morty comes in, 57 hits, 39 wounds. I'm like, what is going on? So yeah,
Yeah, they're like a small range band, like 12 inches is their lethal area, but it's out of control lethality. Like I played them before they were War of the Spider, and even then, like people were surprised. Like I ran the Plague Marine bomb with grenades, and people would run 2 knights into me, and I'd kill 2 knights with just the Plague Marines instantly. And they're like, "What the hell just happened?" I'm like,
yeah,
Plague Marines, man.
Like I held them up long enough because they're so slow, and then a cheeky Tanglefoot meant that they failed to charge on the second turn too. But then, so then I'm like, okay, now I got the initiative. I'm gonna hit them first, and like literally like 4-up invuln, -1 damage, 5-up Feel No Pain, and Will was rolling good 5-ups. It was like, wow, it's just like these guys are freaking hard to kill.
Yeah.
And then Morty's like, oh man, it's just crazy. I just couldn't believe this single model doing so many hits. It was crazy.
Yeah, but I guess the same issue that I guess you were having before, Darren, is that it just can't hold objectives and it moves slow, right? So
yeah,
like
so
even Morty, like you can get away from him.
Yeah, so that's what I did. So I put all my stuff in that one side of the board, so he committed everything. Then the bikes were stuck in with the Demon Prince. They weren't doing anything in combat, so I just fled them out. So he couldn't catch my bikes anymore. And then the bikes went around doing stuff with the biker cap, while my Terminators kind of paid the price just to keep him tied down in that area. So yeah.
Yeah, speed bumps, expensive speed bumps.
Man, that army is hard to kill. Oh my god.
But you just don't kill it. You just go further stuff.
You run around it, yeah.
That's cool. And so my last game was against Jeremy, and which is Dark Angels, which Nick played earlier. And he went first. I deployed pretty good. He didn't really do much turn 1 to me. I was in a good spot, and then turn 2, I was like, I'm gonna put all my melted guns into your aggressors. And so I committed up. I moved my army forward, and I shot it. And then he goes, oh, yeah, I have Azrael. They have a 4-up invul. And I kind of did like a face palm. And so I killed like 2 with my whole army. And I was like, oh, my God. Then he retaliated and cleared my center. And then actually the rest of the game went pretty good in terms of, like, for me, I just couldn't recover from that initial loss, right? That
Yeah.
like if that stuff would have been, and I kind of threw Celestian away turn 1 to grab a cheeky point, and it wasn't worth it at all. And so those two things really just hurt me. But then yeah, like my Repentia came in, cleared off his backfields, I cleared his left. It's just I could never catch up. I was just at the end of the game I was like just a little bit like I forget the exact number, but it was like not a lot, like 15 or 10 behind him, and 59 to 46. So that's 13. But if I would have had that central core a turn later, it would have changed the way he played too, obviously, and all that stuff. And he knows what he's doing. But it just kind of was, I was like, oh, that facepalm moment just really sunk me because
It's a mean army. It was well thought out, like that army for sure.
oh, it's really good.
It's a funny army because it looks like a meme army when you just look at it and you're like, what is all this infantry doing there? But it actually works really well.
Well, it's all good stuff. Like there's nothing really bad in that list. It's it all works really well together.
But when you think of Dark Angel, do you think of Blade Guard and Assault Intercessors and Aggressors?
Personally, and I don't know, like he beat me, but the Blade Guard didn't do much in our game. Like I just wiped them. So I don't know if those were worth it. But the other stuff was like the Primaris stuff with the special characters in the Dark Angel book paired really well.
The 4-up invuln that does it, yeah.
Yeah, and the plasma guys there, that's gross. Like that was like
Inceptors, 3 damage Inceptors.
It's fantastic. Like that's a really nice combo because you run 3 of them, and they do a lot of work in your list. But in that Dark Angel list, they just do a little bit more.
But they only do 2 damage a pop. Yeah.
You run 5?
I run 5.
You ran 3 against our practice game, all right?
No, I ran 5.
You always ran 5?
That's how.
Okay, never mind then.
That's how
3 damage plasma is gross. That's all there is.
But yeah, when they go up to the 3 damage, it's like boom.
And those guns are blast for some reason, so they get max shots against units of 6 or more.
Yeah, it was a really well designed list, and he played it well. But yeah, I just couldn't recover, and I knew that that was like that time when Nick says, "Oh, I make the same mistakes over and over again, and I have to do that." And I did that same mistake against Jason once, where I overcommitted in the middle, lost my gun line. I've done it against Francois. Just what I should have done is stayed out of aggressor range, shot my meltas at the long range into them, and just waited another turn.
But this is why people always preach reps. Like when people jump from army to army to army and they're always disappointed they're not doing well, people this is why good players preach reps. Because at the end of 8th, I wasn't a fantastic player, but when I went to Barry with Thousand Suns, I played so many games at Thousand Suns that it's almost muscle memory at this point. Whereas Grey Knights, I feel like it takes so much cognitive effort just to play the army, just to remember the rules and the interactions, never mind any kind of cheeky tricks, oh, you could do this, it's kind of this and that. No, I'm just okay, all right, are they 3 or 2 attacks, so I think that it comes down to that. It's just reps, right?
Yeah, like the day for me is to your rep point, I'm hitting 13 reps with the sisters, or no, 12 with the sisters, 13 in this edition, and it's I'm getting to the point now where I don't have to reference my codex book very much. But you're right, you have to, once that stuff's gone, you need more reps than now I'm just playing. I attribute it's very similar when you play hockey, right? So when you learn how to play hockey, you're on the ice and you maybe don't know how to skate very well, and you have to think, okay, the puck's over there, I got to skate in that direction, so I got to turn my skates, I got to push.
Yeah.
Whereas, and then a couple years later, after playing, 2 games a week, you just turn and go after the puck. You're not thinking about your skates. And it's the same thing with 40K. I feel the same way.
No, absolutely.
And what's your magic number for reps? Would you say what do you think's a good amount of reps to get with an army?
I guess it probably depends on the individual, but you're probably talking 50, 100, I don't know, because near Berry Bash at that point I'd been playing Thousand Suns to some degree for all of 8th, so you're talking 3 years, that's whatever number of games in those years, so that at that point I go to play and I'm playing, say, Tim on a migraine, it doesn't matter because I've still played this army so much that I know what to do and how to respond and whatever else. So I don't know, I think it's probably I'm at 10 reps like you, similar to the sisters with Grey Knights, and it's only now that I'm starting to be okay, I don't really need the book that much. I understand the rules and strats, but now it's like looking into how different things work. Like I wasn't using that shoot and move spell that much, but I'm thinking I can just use that on a strike squad to gain 6 inches if I need to put them 6 inches into an objective in the psychic phase. Like it doesn't always have to be this, move and hide or whatever else.
And it's not just reps with your army, which obviously you need, but it's reps against different armies. Because I've played my Ultramarines a lot this edition. I'm at maybe 15, 16 games, but half of those were against either Darren or Chris, which, I mean, I've learned from every single one of those games because you're both good players, but it's still only games against Sisters and Custodies, which means that when I'm matched up against something different, the tactics have to change, and because I've not played that matchup before, I'm automatically at a disadvantage. Yeah. Whereas if I've played hundreds of games and gone to dozens of RTTs, I've played against every single army in the game, I'll be a lot better, obviously.
Yeah, and when you learn a new book for this edition, which is awesome, I'm having more fun playing Sisters right now than I think I've had in 40K in a long time.
But this edition is just great.
It's just great, and the army I'm playing, I'm loving it. But if I was playing, let's say, Orcs right now, I'd have less of a learning curve, I'd feel, because I'd know the Orc rules. It'd just be different units and playing them in this scenario. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. My rule of thumb when we used to play Fantasy, the rule was 100 games, Masters and Army. But I think like if you're like a regular tournament player, you play 20 tournaments a year, you keep up, you could probably get away with 20 games with your army because you just play so many reps, right, against so many variety of armies. But I think it depends on how new you are. But even in the top of the 7th edition Fantasy, the guys were saying it's 100 games was like the kind of mythical thing. Once you hit 100 games with the Codex book, you're proficient with it, which is pretty cool.
I think I've hit 100 over the last 2.5 years. Once a week.
And 50 of those were against me.
Yeah. So yeah. But even me, I've been playing the same army for almost every week for 2.5 years now. It's still different with a new edition and a new book. It's like I'm still learning the aggression levels that I need to do against particular armies or on particular missions. I'm still getting used to actually how hard my things are to kill. It's sometimes when I go to the beginning of my turn, I'm like, wow, that much is still alive. I didn't expect that, right? If I knew that, maybe I would have played differently. So I'm still getting used to that too.
I forget his name. Who was the guy that you interviewed last week?
Bridger.
Say again?
Bridger Hahn.
Bridger. So he made a comment about Custodies that I thought was very true in that, not a lot of armies have a unit that can go in, charge something, and then live. And you do. And Nick kind of does as well, not to the same extent as Custodies, but you could buff up one unit and say it lives. But that's like a different perspective. Is like my units do not live. They go in, they kill, and they just die. So yeah, sure. You have to play differently than maybe I would, right? Like I'll throw a unit away, gone, but mine are cheaper, obviously, way cheaper. But it's still like, yeah, maybe you almost have to use that to your advantage. That's what you're strong at, right? Is living. So
I'm just trying to get used to that, right? Because I just assume that unit is not going to be that functional after any particular turn like it used to be. But that's just not the case anymore.
Two Custodies are functional against my army anyway. Two Custodies are just as scary as 5 almost, because 5, you're guaranteed to kill a 10-man unit of mine, let's say. But 2 of them, you're pretty likely to kill 10. So it's...
Sisters are interesting in that way because they hit like a truck, but they have a bit of a glass jaw.
They can and they can't, right? Sometimes they feel super survivable, certain builds in cover, certain... Yeah.
Or,
aspects,
free passing 4-up invulns. That's pretty strong too on character.
Well, that's
only once a phase.
Well, it's once a phase unless you have a banner. Then it's 2 a phase for that unit, and then but if you're within range of the shrine, it's 2 per phase as well. So, but that's also huge because as Darren said, right? Like, let's say I jump Celestian out, and I'm gonna pick a random thing, 4 las cannons, right? 3 hit, 2 to 3 wound. Well, I can auto pass 2 of them if I'm in range of the shrine, and then I could just 4+ with a reroll. Yeah, you might live.
Mm-hmm. And then this is what impresses me most about your army, just to get a bit off topic. The game that we played, My Ultramarines Against Your Sisters, off stream on the release day, where to win, what you needed to do was move Celestine like 26 inches onto my objective, and you just went, all right, Faith Dice for the advance, Strat for the advance and charge, Faith Dice for the charge, and Celestine just covered half the table in one turn. And it was just kind of like, wait, what?
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So you could
Digging out of
actually
the old cheaty dice bag, yeah.
And that was the move that won you the game. You just like Celestine just shot off like half the table.
But you can plan for that with my army.
Well, and you have.
Like I planned for those. It's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. You planned for that, and because you have the Faith Dice and the tools to do it, Miracle Dice, whatever they're called, you were able to do it. That's what I love about that army. It's a thinking man's army.
It's
you plan your moves.
It's a cool mechanic, yeah.
Yeah. You remove variance.
Yeah, and if like it is a strong mechanic, but it's their strong mechanic, right?
Well, if they didn't have that, they'd be trash.
I think so. I think they'd be gone. Toughness 3 up, even 2 up in cover, ignoring -1, even ignoring -1 and 2, you're gone. Like people, like aggressors will shoot you off. So, anyway, the last thing I want to do before we go to Q&A and then wrap this up is I want to kind of go through and very briefly what you would change in your army. So we'll just go in the same order we've been going. Grey Knights, Nick. Any changes to your list for the next tournament?
Yeah, for the next tournament. So what I learned is I think Paladins are strong, but running the 2 big 10-man units, I just find it cumbersome, and it's me still getting used to using them. Because I go from Thousand Suns and horrors and rubrics where I'm all over the table. I have all the table, and my casters can just move anywhere they want to do what they want. Whereas now I feel anchored by those Paladin units. So what I did instead is it's not a big difference. I just removed 5 Paladins from 1 unit with 2 less side cannons in that unit. And I'm adding a Grandmaster Dread Knight. So I'm splitting it into 2 patrols. Grandmaster Dread Knight with the side cannon and silencer. What that does, it gives me another caster. He can be on a 3 up invul. He can shunt himself turn 1, or like any turn, right? So he can gate, or just naturally he's got once per game move anywhere on the table within 9 inches. He's got a big killy sword, and the 2 guns. So he adds a bit of the diversity in terms of like target diversity for my opponent, instead of just throwing 2 units of Paladins where they're like, okay, obvious, I'm just going to shoot at Paladins. Now they're like, okay, do I shoot at the Grandmaster? Do I shoot at the Paladins? And he also adds a bit more of turn 1 firepower and a different type of threat. So I'm gonna play around with that and keep another kind of 5-man Pal unit for maybe backfield objectives. So I don't know, or no, not backfield, but like threaten the opponent's backfield. So I don't know. We're gonna try. I'm gonna keep practicing. Like I said, I'm only on 10 games. I'm gonna need another 10 more, I think, before I'm really starting to like get comfortable with it.
Yeah, that's the thing with COVID. It's hard to find those games, right?
I wonder what would actually happen, Nick, if you just took your 20 Paladins and split them into 4 units of 5.
Well, you can't. You need the 1 unit of 10.
Don't do that.
You need the 1 unit of 10.
You can't do 4 units of 5. They're elites, so you'd be max 3 anyways.
But even then, it spreads your buffs too much.
Yeah. So I find having the 2 units of 10, I'm spreading buffs too much. Like, there's not enough CP, I'm finding, to keep them alive and to keep them killy between the 2, because I can't just hide them like in 8th edition where you can hide and shoot across the wall and win the game. Now they have to be out the open, taking hits and dishing hits, and there's not enough CP to keep the 2 Paladin bombs going, like survivable wise and shooting, killing wise. So I'll have the 1 Paladin bomb, the Grandmaster Dread Knight, and then Paladins that I can drop into the enemy, so that turn 2 they have 5 Paladins that are not insignificant to kill in their back lines. So now I'm kind of pincering them a bit. So they're like, okay, I have to go deal with those Paladins, but I'm still got the Paladins up front and possibly Grandmaster, among other things. So, and, they still need to babysit the characters. So, like, I still need 10 Paladins to, keep me and bring me up to turn 3-ish.
Yeah, I think you need the 1 super killy unit.
Yeah.
Francois, any changes to the Ultramarines?
So
are
it's
you
going to
still in
sound
a place you like?
It's going to sound weird because I went 1 and 2 on the day, but no, I would not change anything in my list right now. I think it's as tuned as I want it to be, and actually, there's 2 reasons why I wouldn't change anything. I think it's already good, despite my eternal debate between Kalgar and G-Man. I like the G-Man bully presence that it gives me, but I think it. Despite the performance this weekend, it's a good list, but also because I'm getting a new codex in like 6 weeks, at this point, I'm just going to stay with what I got and see what massive changes are coming, because everything is going to change soon enough, right?
Yeah.
I think you should put a Judicar in, but
yeah,
well, Judiciar,
yeah,
Judiciary, whatever.
I'd have to.
That was such a butthurt moment.
I was thinking about
Those
that.
things are so good.
So stupid.
My army's more of a. It's a hybrid because it can punch and shoot, but it's a shooty army first, a punchy army second,
Yeah.
I guess. So if I put the Judiciar in, I have to remove 85 points worth of something else. And so do I remove like
Couple of aggressors.
2 Inceptors? Probably.
You could have made the Night Strike last, though, right, against your aggressors?
True, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
maybe.
it's like, oh, he charges. And then how many wounds do aggressors do to a knight,
So
right? It's like,
situationally in that matchup, it would have definitely helped. And the Judiciar is a really strong chess piece for Space Marines, and I'd like to try it, but
I'm glad Space Marines got that. They needed
Yeah.
it.
They totally needed it.
it's
Yeah.
a terrible looking model, too. It looks so Age of Sigmar.
anyway, my point is I'm getting a new codex very, very soon, and everything's going to change, so I'm not trying to overthink it. So in September, next time we do this, it's either going to be the exact same Ultramarine list, or I might decide to go for my fun army and play guard.
Cool. So, Darren, any changes?
Yeah. I've changed the weapon on the biker cap to Hurricane Bolter again because he goes hunting around backfield
That's a huge
objectives
change.
with little chaff, and I need to kill more chaff than one Melta missile. So giving me back the Hurricane Bolter will make that easier for him.
Because you missed with that Melta missile a lot.
Every time. I don't think I actually killed anything with the captain and his Melta missile. And
You
because
kill
that's what
aggressor.
happens. Yeah, when you have one shot, that's what happens when you have Melta. Like every time.
Yeah, invol saves just ruin your day.
Yeah, and his role was, as I used against Will, to clear those zombies. It took me 2 turns to kill the zombies instead of 1 turn if I had Hurricane Bolter. So, it's just more useful for his role. The other change, actually, I was not impressed by the bikers. The salvo, again, like 5 Melta shots, just like your experience with Melta, although mine hit more reliably. It's just still not great, even for the things it's supposed to be good against. And bikes are definitely hard to kill, and they have the mobility. So and they're expensive. So I took the bike unit out, and I've put in a unit of Venatari because I think they're the shiz. And also by dropping 1 Aquilon Terminator,
Technical term.
unit of 4 Aquilon still works very well. I managed to also squeeze in Bertha again because Bertha's just so good.
So on Wednesday, I'm going to shoot the Ventari first.
Well, tomorrow morning I'm going to shoot the Venturi first.
Yeah. So that keeps the mobility. It gets me another big, hard to kill target. It gets me a lot more shooting. I think that's going to be cool. Sisters are staying as is. Sisters and Rhinos are the bomb. And everything else kind of the same. So.
Yeah. So I actually made quite a few changes. One is, and I kind of knew I was going to do this anyways, I went to 1 detachment. And then I dropped a Rhino. I dropped the Dominions. So I went second 3 games in a row. And when you go second 3 games in a row, it was very awesome. It was like a really good experience because it really shows the units that are garbage in the second play when you go second. And that really hurts in this edition to go second. So I was able to have that experience where I was like, oh, these are the units that did nothing all day because I went second. And like the odd game, I'd go first and they'd get up and against Francois, I'd go first. They'd grab a bunch of objectives and be like, these are decent. They're not great, but they did something. And so it really helped me trim some of that fat. So the Dominions are gone. They were replaced with Seraphim. I also split the Seraphim unit. So now I have 3 units of Seraphim with plasma pistols and double Melta pistols because I just need more units to kind of, when I go second, to jump out and do those secondaries as well as contest objectives as well as kill things. So they give you all those things. They're also free to deep strike if I need to. So that's huge. I upped all my repentance to 9 because I have some extra points now.
Ouch.
That I dropped some stuff. And I actually ended up ordering another box of them even though I only needed 5. But I just bit the bullet there. And so I'll have 4 spares, I guess. And yeah, that's about it. I think the core of my army was great. It was just I need more CP, and I needed to trim out those Dominions.
Before we go to question, to piggyback on what you just said, I think in 9th edition you should build your list planning to go second.
Yeah, because then
because
you're
going
guaranteed to
first-
win.
Going first is such a big advantage. If you can somehow make a list that does well going second, you'll be in a very strong position.
or better going second, right?
Right, exactly.
Like you don't want to take those units that are like I go first or they're nothing. Like so those Dominions, for example, they were good because they get a pregame move.
Right.
So even though they get a pregame move, yes, you can go them back, but when you go second, that's now a 5-man sister unit that does nothing. That their ability that you pay the 5 points for, which I know is nothing, did nothing, and they lose the obsec than the regular sisters.
But that's exactly my point. Going first is such an advantage as it is that you don't need to build on that advantage. Just try and mitigate the disadvantage of going second.
Yeah, well, the Seraphim, because they move 12 base, they do what they do anyway, but better.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're more points, but I just got rid of my Rhino because I was like, whatever, I'll just take more Repentia.
If you just have the one Rhino, it doesn't do much for you.
Yeah, I was using it to catapult my sisters 3 inches, but then I was like, I don't need to because I can literally just pick up 5s and 6s and make these long bombs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have the miracle dice to do the charge, I just won't take the gamble. That's the best part about the sisters is my Repentia don't leave the building or my ruins unless they're guaranteed to touch you. I'm guaranteed to reach there, or else they stay.
Nope.
And I have that
5-3
luxury.
whirlwinds.
Yeah, you should. But then again, they're expensive now.
I know.
Like they went up. Like that's a lot of points of.
That's why the Scorpius is a broken unit because it's so good for the points.
Can you use a miracle die on your strat to deny spells?
No.
Oh, delicious.
Yeah. So it's only a 4+ from the whole army. I can though, because I was debating this against you if I played UNIC, which we didn't get to, is do I take because instead of +1 to my advance and charge, like both of them, I can take +3 to dispel. So now I have my whole army within 24 inches of any of your units. I roll 1d6 and I add 3 to it.
And then you can use your miracle die. So then you can.
No.
Oh, you can't use it on those denies?
Yeah, on
you
denies, standard
okay.
denies. Yeah,
So you
yeah.
could do like a 9, a warp charge 9 deny then, essentially, if you have a 6.
guarantee it. I could guarantee it. Yeah, and then if I fail that, so that's the other thing. The strat to auto deny a 4+ is I have to fail that. I have to fail that dispel.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I have those options. I was probably still going to take the +1 to charge against you just to get into your units, but I don't know. There's not a lot of psychers this edition, so it's not a big deal, right? Like your army has them, but really nobody else did. Francois had Tigerius, but that's it, really. And it's not enough for me to make my whole army to stop that one guy, right?
James had Psyker, but he's Chaos. You basically need Psychers when you're Chaos.
Exactly, and I haven't played against a lot of Chaos. So, cool. So we'll go on to any questions for this show, Darren? Or?
Yeah, okay. There's some custodies questions here. We don't have to. I'll address them tomorrow. Somebody realized that they can't take a Leviathan as a warlord and still be Battleforged, so they can't run the old Leviathan in Iron Hands anymore. I don't know if that's true. Can you not take a Leviathan as a warlord anymore?
Well, you can't take it as your warlord, but you can give
make
it a
him
warlord.
a character.
Yeah.
That's what people were doing anyway, weren't they?
Yeah.
They're
Yes.
making him a character and giving him a warlord trait.
Because the only way to make any random model a warlord would be to not have any HQs. Would that even work?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, whatever.
Eamon's asking us, what do we think? Can we describe like the optimal table?
That's a tough one. I think you should be able to reasonably hide your stuff turn 1.
Yes. So
A
actually,
good 3/4 of your
have
army.
you guys read the guidelines that GW put in the rulebook about terrain? I think they're actually pretty good. It's just that no one follows them.
I have, but why don't you synopsis it for us?
So basically, they say that you should have a piece of terrain for every 12 square inches of the board, which makes sense to me. Now, obviously, if you put a single barrel for each 12-inch pieces, that's not going to work. But so as an example, I think Darren's table is really good, but maybe a little too busy. So remove a couple pieces from Darren's table, and you have the perfect table, in my opinion.
I have.
So you're talking what? 3, 6, 9 pieces, you're saying? 12 pieces.
So
6, 8
how many
big
do you have?
ruins, 2 forests, and 2 kind of just like walls. That's it. That's all I got
right. So
now.
you have like 10 big pieces. I think that's too many. So like 8 medium-sized pieces would be good.
I like forests a lot too. They add the
I like
variety. I
forests.
think
I
if
like
you go
forests.
all ruins, it's a bit much.
So I do like something like 2 forests, 2 craters and 5 ruins, something like that.
Well,
5 or
it should
6.
be an even number. I would say
Yeah,
6.
so 4
Just
to 6.
because everything, in my opinion, should be symmetrical.
No, you're right. You're right. So let's say 2 forests, 2 craters, because I like that brings in variety. But you also need a line of sight blocking. So if you're doing big pieces, maybe 4. If you're doing medium pieces, maybe 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say if you're gonna err one way, err on too much than too little.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, too little is just not enjoyable.
And I play gun lines, guys, so I'm coming at it saying even if you play gun lines, you want terrain because otherwise the game's just not fun.
I think the game was designed.
But you're a short gun line. You're not a.
Well, I play Imperial Guard too, right?
And the game was designed around more terrain rather than less terrain. This edition, anyway.
So I don't have the exact specific of what GW wrote in the book in mind, but I remember reading that section and going, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, the game's always been more enjoyable, almost with more terrain. All the way back, I can think of. It's almost always been better.
Yeah. Planet Bowling Ball sucks unless you're playing Knights.
Yeah. So anything else, Darren?
Another Custodes question. Did you see any particularly interesting lists at the tournament? We've kind of discussed most of them already. Did you?
Yeah, so like Will Paul's was was super interesting. You know, he took the new outflanking stratagem to put Morty in outflank because a lot of, I guess, the downside of him in the old edition is that he would just get shot off the board, and now you can essentially put him right in their grill. And I thought that was clever with deep striking the Terminators to absorb all the wounds. So you're essentially just peekabooing Morty. And you could even do it like turn 3 if you want to, so you could soften them up a little bit or know exactly where you need to go in. And even just that threat. I thought his list was very interesting. I don't think it was super impressive. Maybe if he added some more Nurglings and was able to have more board control, it might have been a lot
Will
more
just
impressive.
told me that he just wanted to see like how if Mortarion could live and if outflanking him would work. He knew full well that it wasn't really going to be the strongest list. It was just he wanted to experiment a bit with Mortarion. That was basically his
exactly.
goal.
Yeah. And I don't think he has the models to make it.
Yeah, Jeremy's Dark Angel list was the most off kilter, and it definitely worked. Right, it was kind of a list that if you had asked me to list off the top 10 most powerful lists in 40k, I would not have gone for the Dark Angel infantry heavy kind of list, but it worked really well.
Well, I just think it's funny though.
None of the usual tropes of Dark Angel: Sammy, Talon Masters, Deathwing Knights, an apothecary to drop things in. He didn't play any of those Dark Angels,
which is exactly
stuff,
why his list was so interesting.
Yeah.
Because he just went completely off the wall.
Honestly, his list looked like a normal Space Marine list.
Yeah. With Azrael and Asmodai.
Yeah, so it's like just a different flavor of the Space Marine list, right? And he had some cool stuff in there, and
which,
he played.
To be fair, he was sad about because he's a through and through Dark Angel guy. And he was like, well, I think this is going to do well, but it's not really flavorful. And he still played it. And props to him. I'm actually really impressed.
Because you could take his list, take out the Dark Angel characters, his exact list, put in G-Man, and it's probably just as good.
I mean, it's going to be really good, but he's going to play very different because you lose the 4++.
Add the Vulcan Histan character and make them salamanders, and you do just fine.
That's what I'm saying, though. Or you could do even if you wanted to
swap the flamers, but
yeah.
But yeah, you could definitely like a lot of those Marine archetypes are similar.
That would have been a really good salamanders list with flamer aggressors and Vulcan.
Yeah. So actually, I've talked to Jeremy before because I used to play a lot of Dark Angels, and trying to make the Ravenwing Deathwing thing work because that's where the flavor of Dark Angels is. It's just not super great, because the units are so expensive. And so, he's saying on Twitch right now, he's been trying to play those kind of lists for a long time that just don't work as well. That's not where the rules writers' heads are right now.
Which is sad.
So, it's too bad. And that's why I haven't played my Dark Angels at all, because I want to play that flavor of Dark Angels, right? I don't want to just play
Well, he was able to use the Dark Angel. Yeah, he was able to use the Dark Angels rules effectively, like the Azrael and whatever else. It was... it's added, to it.
But it's neat, so when you're thinking about it from a WTC perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's like that you could almost take the same list 3 times. That's really they're different. Don't get me wrong, they're different. Yeah, Ultramarines you maybe take 2 aggressors instead of 1, but it's the same basic archetype, right?
Yeah. So you can have your salamanders player, your Dark Angels player,
Until
and
October.
For now they haven't really ruled it that way, but we don't know where that's going to end up. Let's be honest. It's going to come down to a
Well,
captain's
I
vote.
was having a chat with my CanHammer team tournament team today, and we were saying if the tournament was today, we would take Death Guard, Grey Knights, some flavor of Space Marine, Custodes, and then probably one random other race, right?
Well, if it was today, I would probably do the Dark Angel, Space Marines, Space Wolves, Custodes.
Space Wolves.
Yeah.
Well, they've lost the all upsec all the time, so they're maybe not as scary.
Yeah. I still like them, but maybe if it was my team,
Anyway.
I'd probably take Sisters instead of them. But you know what I mean.
Either way, there'd be a lot of power armor around.
lot of power armor. Yeah,
That would be Death Guard, Custodes, Marines, maybe Grey Knights or something, and Harlequin.
Jeremy's list was exciting because I looked at it and I went, except for that Impulsor with the 2 units in there, I think I have almost everything in your list.
Yeah.
Like, because I buy all the starter sets, and a lot of that stuff kind of comes in the starter sets, like the Assault. Maybe not to the same extent, like 3 of this unit, 2 of that unit. Maybe I have 2 of that and this. But I was like, ooh, I could maybe play this Dark Angels list. If
The worst part about the Dark Angels
WTC.
releases is they did not primaricize Azrael.
Yeah, maybe he'll come, or maybe the line will come back and accidentally kill him. You never know.
Acceptable. Acceptable.
But he's so good. He's so good for what he does. Even Jason was still saying to take him, even with Deathwing Terminators type thing, because they went down. Well, they didn't go down, but they stayed pretty cheap. But yeah, the Deathwing Terminators just don't do the damage. So it's an interesting theory. You know, I have the things in the Dark Angels that I want to be good because I have them painted. But all the stuff that's not painted in my army is the good stuff. So.
Well, I'll just say that if they bring back the Lion, I'm going to paint a 4th Space Marine army.
No, just buy
Yeah,
mine, Francois.
I'll probably commit.
Just buy mine. It's all
I'll
plastic.
probably commit. Yeah, I definitely pull the shelf of Dark Angel models out and maybe spray prime them green or something like that if the line comes out.
Yeah.
But cool. Anything else, Darren? Are we good?
No, I think that's it.
So, well, you can answer the custody questions tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, so the rest of this
Anyway,
week,
thanks.
to tomorrow, I'm going to Chris's house to play. I don't know if we're going to be streaming anything, but if we do, it'll be during the day. And then tomorrow night is Tactica. I'm going to talk about Saturday's games from just my games. And then Wednesday, Francois is coming over, bringing Guard. So that will be fun because we haven't played Guard in a long time. So
I haven't brought out my guard in like
Yeah.
6 months, but I painted 3 Targs Primes and 3 Bulgarins just for you
yeah,
today.
so that's cool. So yeah, the rest of the week's going to be exciting, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Nick, and thanks, Francois, for joining us.
That was a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
always fun.
Thanks to everybody that's listening, and have a good one.
Good night.